Prices for normal and exotic cars are topping, but this does not apply to the mid-engine Ferrari market. That market took an extra shot of espresso and continued its upward trajectory. Some models saw an increase up to 8%. Now there are of course some differences between them, but in general the Ferrari market was quite strong during Q2. This is of course good news if you are a Ferrari owner, but a bit of a disappointment if you are a buyer waiting for prices to come down. Though I think it's fair to expect that even Ferrari prices will cool off sooner or later. But before we talk about future prices, let's have a look at the current market, the top 3 price changes during Q2 and the questions that you asked about the Ferrari market. Over here we have the US mid-engine Ferrari market for the majority of the models that were produced between 1995 and now. I usually start the videos with these kind of market overviews as it gives a good impression of the peculiarities and price levels. If you are a subscriber to the channel, you're probably familiar with this. However, if this is your first channel visit, welcome. This channel is all about car values and you could say it fills a niche in a niche market. If you're thinking about buying or selling a car, I definitely recommend to check out the latest market update for the car you're interested in. It might save you a lot of money. But now then, back to the current Ferrari market. We can see a few interesting things in this graph. First, we can see that the price variation for each model is very large. It might be the largest of any market. And the reason for this is of course the special models like the Scuderia and the Pista. These push prices up. Pista prices, for example, stretch all the way to SF90 levels. Second, we can identify 4 price segments. At the bottom we have the F355, 360 and F430. Prices for these cars start at $75,000 and go up to $170,000. That is, if we forget about the special models for a moment. What's interesting over here is that the 360 is priced a tad lower than the F355. The F430, however, is priced clearly a lot higher than the 2 older cars. It sits neatly between the 360 and the 458, but doesn't fully bridge the gap. Prices are more aligned to the 360 market than to the 458 market, but this makes sense. The second price group consists out of the 458 and the 488, and this is perhaps the most fascinating group. Look for example at the prices for a 458 from model year 2015 and a 488 for model year 2016. Exactly, there is very little difference between them. Moreover, the market bottom is higher in the 458 market, and this shows how popular the 458 is. I think it still looks the part, but it is of course the naturally aspirated engine that draws buyers to this market. The next group consists out of one car only, the F8. We can see that prices start at $400,000 but go up to $600,000. They overlap to a large extent with the 488 Pistas. Again, not something which comes as a complete surprise. Finally then we have the SF90. In terms of technology this car sits in a different league and this shows up in the prices. Starting at $800,000 and going up to more than $1 million, this car is reserved for only a few of us. But how did these prices get here? As I already revealed in the beginning of the video, Ferrari prices increased during Q2, some even went up by 8%. And this is surprising to say the least. In the most recent series of market updates, I shared with you that prices are topping and that some markets even saw small price decreases. Think about most of the 911 models, some McLaren markets and the Audi R8 market. Let's see which Ferrari model saw the largest price increase. I will cover the top 3 and like a typical YouTuber, I will start with number 3 and work my way up to number 1. On number 3 we have the F8 Spider. This is a very young market but still saw a price increase of 2.8%, and this is more than what we can see in the coupe market. Prices over there were more or less flat. Perhaps people preferred the Spider for the summer months. However, to be honest, it could also be the result of chance. The F8 Spider market is young and very small. The median price points that you see are based on approximately 15 cars. The 2.8% increase during Q2 is then also not fully statistically confirmed. Yet, if we assume for a moment that it is correct, we can see that the increase rate is a lot less than the 10% during Q1. And this of course means that the price trend is flattening. But even with this lower increase rate, it performed better than most cars. And with that, let's have a look at number 2 on the list, the Ferrari F430. Over here we have the price development for the automatic ones between March 2020 and now. And what a remarkable development it is. In the beginning of 2020 we saw a small price decrease, but prices skyrocketed after that, just like they did in the rest of the market. Moreover, they followed the market during the winter. Prices started to cool down and the price trends for other cars were entering a new paradigm, but this doesn't seem to apply to the F430. Prices increased by 3.8% during Q2, and this is a decent increase for such a short time horizon. It also means that compared to the market low of May 2020, prices are now up by 37.7%. And with such a large price increase, the F430 ranks among the top when it comes to price increases. However, even though that prices increased by such a high number, we could be seeing the first cracks in the F430 market. If we look at the market characteristics with the supply, median mileage and median model year development, we can see that supply increased for the first time since March 2020. At the end of Q1 there were 39 cars listed for sale versus 50 now. And this is of course by no means any proof that this market is cracking or that prices will cool down. It's merely a very early indicator that something like that could happen. Supply is still extremely low compared to the 98 cars that were listed for sale on March 2020. So don't panic if you own a F430, just keep this in the back of your mind. But now then, it is time to have a look at the Ferrari model that saw the largest price increase during Q2. And if you would like to know what model this is, please support the channel by clicking on the like button down below. Thank you. With an increase of 8% during Q2, the Ferrari 458 is the clear winner of this quarter. This is really an extraordinary price increase and further reinforces the upward price trajectory. I mean, look at that. Since April 2020, prices have been increasing more or less linearly. I believe this is the only market where this happened. All the other markets saw some form of price slowdown. So from this we can conclude that the 458 remains exceptionally popular and that people are really buying into the last naturally aspirated mid-engine Ferrari story. I need to mention though that the price increase is predominantly driven by the Spider market, but that's perhaps not such a big surprise given the time of the year. Nevertheless, being the last of its kind, the 458 market does then also start to look a little bit like a collector's market. This price increase over here is mainly driven by the low mileage cars. And with this I mean the cars between 0 and 7,500 miles. Cars in the higher mileage categories, so the ones over 13,000 miles saw a flat price development. And you can see this very well in the following graph. This namely shows the price development per mileage category. The blue line represents the cars between 0 and 7,500 miles, and you can see that these cars were driving the prices during last year. But again, just as in the F430 market, it might be worthwhile to keep an eye on the supply level. We can see that supply levels fell sharply between April 2020 and the summer of 2021. Yet, the trend turned. We can see that there are now 122 cars for sale versus 71 1 year ago. Again, this does not mean that prices can't increase further. It's merely an early indicator that a flattening of the price trend might be imminent. And with that, it's time to have a look at the questions you asked. 2 weeks ago I asked you guys and girls on my Instagram what you would like to know about the mid-engine Ferrari market. I started to do this for the more popular videos so that there's a little bit more interaction and that the data remains relevant. So if you would like to see your question featured in a video, follow me on Instagram and keep an eye out for my stories. Let's start with the question of B No Limit. He would like to see a comparison between the 458 and 488 market. Over here we have the 458 in blue and the 488 in orange, and this reveals a remarkable difference. We already saw that 458 prices are up by 8%. 488 prices however saw a drop of 2.7%. In fact, this is one of the few mid-engine Ferrari models that saw a price decrease during Q2. There is of course no reason to panic. This price drop over here is not statistically confirmed, so we need another data point to see if this really means the end of the upward price trajectory. It does however align with what we can see in the broader market. And with that, let's move on to the next question. Fino, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but I'm sure I'm doing it wrong, would like to know more about the Challenge Stradale, Scuderia and Speciale market. Now the thing with these markets is that supply levels are very low, and this means that outliers can have a very big effect on the aggregate numbers. But let's have a look at it anyway. Over here we have the price trends for the Speciale, Scuderia and Challenge Stradale. And we can see that prices for the Scuderia and Speciale increased by crazy amounts. Compared to March 2020, Speciale prices are up by 57.5% and Scuderia's by 50%. And these are crazy amounts, especially if you consider that most of the increase was taken since June 2021. For the Challenge Stradale I don't have so much data, but you can see that prices were basically flat since the end of last year. Now I checked this data with various auction results and it seems to me that it is approximately correct. But as I said before, due to the low supply levels, we need to be a bit careful with interpreting these aggregate numbers. And with that, it's time to wrap up and conclude. Compared to other supercar markets, the mid-engine Ferrari market is still exceptionally strong. Most models saw price increases during Q2 and 458s even went up by 8%. This is followed by a 2.8 and 3.8% increase for the F8 and 430. However, we saw that supply is creeping up in several markets, and this might be an early signal that the largest price increases are behind us. And with that quick wrap up, we arrive at the end of the video. Now, if you enjoy this data-driven way of analyzing car markets, but would have liked to see the analysis for a different car, let me know the car for which you would like to see an analysis by commenting the name of the car down below in the comment section. Once there are enough requests for a certain car, I will make a video about it. Don't forget to subscribe and to click on the notification bell so you get notified when your requested analysis goes live. As always, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next week for a new video.